first we should start by, because the letter keeps referring to what they say are unverified sources. Unverified sources. For you, as a journalist who has done this for a long time, how does that sound to you when somebody writes you and say your sources are unverified?
Well, I think I look at this letter and I think the general impression I get when they say unverified sources is that they are perhaps equating verification to maybe official court documents or official documents from the special prosecutor. So when the lawyer says unverified sources, he's probably referring to the fact that these are not official documents or documents that are deemed to be part of the official investigation. That's how I understand them by saying of unverified sources. But I think what we have to understand is that in a case like this, their verifications are two levels. So there is the media verification process, which has nothing to do with, and sometimes even court documents and official documents are subject to media verification. So the fact that there's a document at the court does not necessarily mean that that document itself is sacrosanct. We have to understand that the court itself is an investigative process. So every document that goes before the court is not necessarily a verified document. It's just an exhibit. And so I find it difficult but as a lawyer who has a very selfish interest in this matter, perhaps he's just saying that these are not documents that they are aware of or part of the official documents that have been provided. In fact, they did not just say that unverified, they also say unidentified and nameless. And once again, I think there must be a distinction between the practice of law and the practice of journalism. These are two different professions. Even though they all seek to chase the facts and the truth of a matter, their audiences are different, their methods are different, and so I find that when they are dealing with journalists, I think it's important that we put this thing into perspective. Journalists can name or not name their sources. And so when you say nameless, unidentified, unverified sources, maybe as a lawyer who has a selfish interest to protect a client, maybe you are at liberty to do so. But we have to understand that journalism is not legal practice. And so that has to be properly explained and put into proper perspective.
And the advice usually to a journalist is not to name your sources. In fact, the advice is, even at the risk of being jailed yourself, best thing is to keep your sources very confidential.
No, it's not necessarily the case. I mean, there are some sources that go on record. So there are two types of sources. So there are sources that go on record that explain things and can be quoted. There are other sources that we call confidential sources who usually will ask for anonymity. And so therefore, this is something that the journalist and the source will agree prior to an investigation or prior to a report. So I can give you the background story, but I don't want you to name me. Those are things that the journalist agrees with the source. And those are the difficult areas, so that when a source says, I'm going to give you the information, or I'm going to give you an idea, however, I do not want to be named, it makes the journalist work a little bit tougher, because then you also would like to say, well, can I do another cross-check? Can I check somewhere else, since it's not going on record, or since the nature of this case does not allow this person to go on record? Can I get somebody else to go on record? And so it's a two-way thing. There are two different types of sources. One is that on the record, he explains, yes, this woman owns an account here, this is a balance, blah, blah, blah. Or yes, we found out she has an account here and this is the amount in it. Or there are sources that say, yes, I can tell you where the investigation is. I can tell you what we have found. I can tell you all of these, but you can't attribute it to me. So those are the two kinds of sources that the journalists have to deal with. And in matters like this, the sources usually tend to be anonymous. So you can't blame Joy FM that they use nameless, and in nameless they mean anonymous. That's really the journalistic term for it. So nobody wants to go on record, but someone wanted to provide background for Joy FM. So nameless, unidentified, unverified sources just basically comes up to one word in journalism: anonymous.
But you said that they are relying on the fact that these are not matters placed before the public, perhaps in court documents by the special prosecutor. That is their reliance. But they also seem to make a very definite statement that it is false.
Yeah. So what I was basically saying was that you asked me the specific question, what could they mean by unverified sources? And my explanation was that perhaps in their understanding, unverified sources are probably is because they are not seeing that this and this person said this and this person said this. What the Office of Special Prosecutor, Office of the Special Prosecutor is an amorphous agency. Okay, so when somebody says that sources at Office of the Special Prosecutor, he's not basically saying that the OSP itself gave them that information. The OSP office is made up of different levels. There's investigator, administrative. There are so many individuals there. So when the journalist says that a source, the special prosecutor, is not saying like an official source, and that is why the person is not named. And so I think people need to understand, or the lawyers need to understand this situation. When Joy FM said that their sources are the OSP, they did not say that the OSP said that they found A, B, C, D. The Joy FM's report was very categorical that their sources at the OSP. So that will, in this case, that will be someone or an individual or a group of individuals that speaks unofficially to Joy FM, that asks for anonymity, that is perhaps knowledgeable in the processes or the details of the investigation. Those are, for me, the most probable scenarios. But I think the OSP itself did not, as an organization, did not issue an official statement. Joy FM itself said sources at the OSP. So I think people are confusing the two, because I think the OSP also issued a statement.
Yes.
And its statement, from what I understand, is the fact that they have not issued any statement or giving names or giving specific information to anybody. So that in that case, the OSP as an institution. But that's not what we are dealing with. It's a complete misunderstanding of the use of the word sources. Joy FM's report, as I understand it, is that they have sources within the Office of Special Prosecutor who is vested with some information regarding this investigation, who might have given them this information. So in matters like this, first you want to look at Joy FM itself. Okay, what has been its credibility over the years? Joy FM is a very established media house. So will they go to press, or would they go on air with information if they are not too sure about the credibility? Because at this point, it boils down to you and your source. Do you believe him? Do you not believe him? And it is very, very important, Senna, because in investigations like this, where there are so many interests going on, you have to be careful also about your sources and their motivations for leaking or giving you information and not going on record. So it's a catch-22 really. The fact that information comes from somebody that says that you know, or somebody who is working at the OSP does not necessarily also mean that it's right. In fact, there have been instances where people deliberately mislead the media in order to destroy their credibility. And so therefore, these are things that you have to weigh as a journalist. You weigh the credibility of the source, and that is done by, for example, the level of position he occupies in the organization. You also have to do an analysis of the possible motivations for trying to give you that information. You also probably have to look at if you have dealt with this source over a long period of time. This is his credibility. He's always been right. He's always been fair in his in information he gives you. Those are things that you do before you go on air with something of this nature. So, but you see, Senna, I think there's also another misunderstanding about what Joy FM wrote, because I have heard a lot of the news reports. I think what Joy published was the fact that, if my memory is right, that there was an account at Prudential Bank, and this I want us to take very significantly, that there was a transaction value of 5,048 million Ghana cedis.
Yes.
So a transaction value might not necessarily mean a cash balance on the account. So it could be that from, let's say, 2021 or 2020, or since the minister became Minister of State, he has operated this account, and between that period of time, the amount of money that has gone through the account, because when they say transaction value, that is really what it could also mean, that the amount of transactions that have gone through the account is equivalent to 5 million. So when you write to him and say that the information about the cash, the amount of money found, is wrong, you might also be getting it wrong. And so we have to have that at the back of our mind. So there are two transactions that Joy FM reports on. One is the fact that it's 5 million transactions. What we don't know is within what period. But transactions, in my opinion, could mean that on this day, somebody deposited $10,000, somebody deposited 5 million, 1 million, 2 million, and over a period, cumulatively, you have $5 million. Then there's the CD account, which is 48 million. The other account, the other information I think Joy FM published is the fact that they said there's an investment at Societe Generale. And there are so many banks in Ghana. Okay, the fact that this story seems to pinpoint two specific banks. And when you know the history of politics and political investment, those banks are very key. You're more likely to, if you know the system, you're more likely to know where people will do stuff like that. So the Joy FM of all the banks pinpointed Prudential Bank. This is not to say that they are right, but it is instructive that the names of the banks are not hidden in anonymous, or they didn't say that Joy FM sources say that there's 5 million, 48 million, and 1,700,000 in a financial institution. They were very specific. And so if it turns out that they actually did not know or verify, then that would be a very grave error. But the fact that they were that specific suggests to me that perhaps maybe they must have checked. The other thing that I would like to bring to your attention is the things that sometimes in very sensitive investigations like this, reporting on sensitive investigations like this, some journalists do. One will be that you'll be surprised that this information is coming entirely not from the OSP or a source there. It's probably coming from a bank or a bank staff. And in order to hide the identity of sources, from sensitive information agencies like that. You know how the banks are so secretive about giving information about their clients. So it is also very entirely possible that this information could have come from a bank staff who knows about this account and has details of it. So, and then George just decided to say, since the OSP is the one saying they have frozen accounts, perhaps the easiest way is probably also to say, okay, sources there. You don't lose anything by doing things like that. So I think it's very interesting. At the end of the day, I think Thursday is the date set for the hearing of the freeze order. I think you cannot go and say I'm freezing account without naming the name of the bank and where it is and how much is involved.
Okay.
So I think a few information will come there. But I think since the last time I spoke to you on this matter, it's been exciting, isn't it? Because the first time we discussed if you were in respect of the OSP, if they were going to do an investigation like this.
I'll come back to that, but I listening to you, I'm wondering how this dilemma can be resolved. But first of all, the OSP has already even confirmed that there are 4 bank accounts in Prudential Bank that they are following. There are 3 at SG. They have filed a confirmation order in court, so at least we know that there are bank accounts in Prudential Bank. Just that they did not confirm how much is in them.
Yes. So one, you know that the Joy FM, you can, based on that, you can say that at least the first leg of the Joy FM report is clarified now. That there is probably money in Prudential Bank and Societe Generale. And what I think is also instructive to mention is the fact that in respect of Societe Generale, there's a specific amount, 1 million Ghana cedis investment, and then 700,000 cedis cash. You know, when it's difficult to speculate on things like this when you're a journalist on a sensitive topic like this. The Joy FM report seems very definite, and one is tempted to believe that they probably know something that we all do not know. That does not mean that they cannot get it wrong. Every media house can get it wrong sometimes. But how interesting, because from the first time we spoke, it was just a case that the minister had accused.
And like I said, I'll come up because a few things. One, what would an apology and a retraction from Joy FM mean to the story they have published?
Well, I mean, an apology and a retraction will mean that they got it wrong. And if they got it wrong, it might not be. You know, there's also this thinking from sections of the public, and sometimes coming from the quarters of law, that once there's an investigation going on, the journalist is supposed to report only what the investigators have put out. That is not true. So long as the investigation exists, Joy FM or any media house reserve the right to go beyond what the investigators are doing. The investigators are also accountable to the public, and it is the job of the media to hold even the investigators to account. And so, therefore, it is not the case that if special prosecutor has not said this, and you have information or you want to pursue a certain angle of this story, you cannot. That's not true. The only thing you have to be sure is the fact that your reports are accurate and they are fair. And so, to ask Joy FM to retract and apologize, if Joy FM actually does that, then it is just a confirmation that, one, their source was bogus, two, must have bogus and misled them, and three, that they themselves failed to cross-check the information that this bogus informant must have given them. Because, like I said, when somebody decides to go off record, it gives you more responsibility to try and verify a few things. If a source tells you, well, we're looking into two accounts, one at Prudential and one at Societe Generale, and we have about 40 million and 5 million in it. But you cannot quote me on it. It gives you the responsibility to perhaps try and see if you have sources within Prudential Bank to try to confirm, just so that you are also not working on a slippery slope. So if Joy FM eventually apologizes and retracts, it will be the case that they failed to do their homework in respect of this information. It's not it should not be that Joy FM is bogus. These things happen sometimes. It will just be a professional lapse on their part if such a sensitive information like this was not checked.
You wanted to make a point on how far we've come now with the investigations.
Yes, because the last time we spoke, I think we discussed if the OSC was going to do an investigation like this, what kind of? I think I took pains to take your listeners through what kind of investigation will it be? Will it be a covert investigation or will it be an overt investigation? And at the stage of investigation management, I think we also discussed the fact that if it is a covert investigation, then obviously nobody knows about it. But if it is an overt investigation where there's such a high public interest, such as this matter, you will also have to devise a plan of communication. And therefore, either you are going to agree to brief the citizens and the media a lot more regularly, or you may decide to do things like specific leaks because you are targeting a particular impact. And so that section, I think, is where it's now becoming a little murky, because you don't know whether the office of the special prosecutor, like I said that day, the media will not wait for you if you decide that you are going to do a non-confirmation and non-denial approach to communicating on this investigation. So the media will not wait because there is such a high public interest. And the whole essence of investigations like this is because it is of significant interest to the public and to the nation. So that aspect, I think I don't see a proper plan in addressing how to carry the public along, carry the media along, and control the information flow. And so if the OSP fails to do that, at the end of the day, they're going to be dealing with this. The news reports will come here, they will have to come and debunk it, or they will have to keep quiet over it. And then it creates that whirlwind of confusion within the public space. But my God, we've come so far. I think the last time we also discussed the fact that this investigation was going to be exciting and that it was going to be very broad if someone were to look into it. Since the time we spoke, I think the complainant, Madame Cecilia Dapaah, became a suspect, right? She moved from a complainant, she's now become a suspect. She did not just become a suspect, she was put under arrest. She was not just put under arrest, her home or her homes were searched. Her homes were not just searched. Now we are finding out that perhaps more money must have been found in her two homes. I am hearing figures. The one that is publicly out is $590,000 and 2.7 million Ghana cedis was found as a result of the search that followed her arrest. We move from the arrest now to what we are now witnessing, temporary freeze of her financial assets. And so, but then you know that financial assets is not just the only assets that people own. There are also physical assets. So I think that eventually, following the financial assets, there will also be a move to go into physical assets. So physical assets will be homes, maybe he bought businesses, maybe he bought shares on the stock exchange, or he bought shares in publicly traded companies, or he bought luxury cars, he bought luxury watches, or he bought whatever. So there's also the aspect of physical assets that will eventually come up. the other thing that I think has emerged is also what is now evolving, like I discussed with you the very early stage, the link analysis. You remember that her husband lives in a public property with her in the official residence. So she's now, when they searched the house, there was all these things that, her husband could also be having part of that money in that public space. So now her husband now comes in. There's also talk that, look, her husband is an architect and he did all these projects. So immediately the husband's businesses now comes into this investigation. We understand that she has a daughter. Now the daughter, and whether she has businesses or whether she operates an account or whether she has investment, will become subject to this link analysis. If you look at what Joy FM is saying, if you want to go by that, and you want to go by the special prosecutor's claim of the fact that there's financial assets that they are trying to freeze, what would you find in financial transactions? One is that somebody must have gone to deposit cash in her account. Who is that person? On what date did this person do that? Somebody must have gone to put a check, deposit a check in that particular account. It's part of the transaction analysis. Who is this person? Did it come from a company? Who is this company? What are they doing? What is the link between this company and the office of the minister? So all of these things will immediately come back to be included in the link analysis that will keep going. The more you speak, the more things go on, the more this investigation will keep expanding as far as I'm concerned. So once all these transaction analysis are done, for example, on a specific date, somebody went to deposit cash, or the minister herself went to deposit cash. If she did that, you also would like to do what we call a scan. You want to do, does these deposits or these transactions fit into a particular timeline? For example, did it coincide with the award of a major contract at the ministry? Or did it coincide with the payment for a contract at the ministry? So all of that scan will happen so that you can make sense of the link analysis and the transaction analysis of the various bank accounts. So it's getting interesting. We've moved quite forward. I think there's still a lot more work to be done, and this case is promising to be quite exciting, because you remember the last time we spoke, we moved from speculations that perhaps this could be funeral donations. And now we are at the place where we say, perhaps the money probably belongs to her husband. Or we've moved to the stage where we say perhaps the money came from her her late brother, who gave cash to her. So we're moving. Is moved from that stage where she was the complainant to a suspect, and all the way down to where we are today. So it looks like this sounds like this is going to be a long way.
And so far, what's your assessment of the investigations?
Well, I think that I was particularly impressed by the surprise arrest and the concurrent search. Usually that's what you do. People always have in their mind how an investigation could be. So, and I'm not, in this particular case, let's be clear, I'm not referring to Madame Cecilia Dapaah. So when people commit crimes, they always think that they've committed a perfect crime. So they will sit down and say, I'm going to do A, B, C, D. How do I get there? This is exactly how I'm going to do this. Okay, crime always comes with punishment. How can I evade punishment? I'm going to evade punishment by doing A, B, C, D. Okay? So usually people think about things in that manner. And they fail to predict the behavior of investigators. So you realize that when Cecilia Dapaah was invited, remember she was not put under arrest. They did not go to her house to arrest her. She was invited to the OSP first, and he gave her the false impression that, oh, this is going to be a questioning, and at the end of the day, you go back home. That's the impression I got, because the fact that they still found money in that home suggests to me that she just thought this was going to be one of those investigations where she will go to the OSP. After that, she will come home. But what happened? Immediately she finished, she was put under arrest, and then they did a concurrent search. That was a surprise element that for me was important, and the OSP needs to be commended for that, because if they did not do that, based on the questioning and the lifestyle forms that they were giving, if they had gone home, for example, any normal person, not because they are guilty or whatever, but because they now get a sense that, look, the way we perceive this investigation might not be the way it looks like it will go, or this investigation, we are completely unprepared for it. The scope looks bigger. The approach looks different from what we thought. They would have gone home now to begin to now look at this having money at home and all of that thing differently. So the concurrent search and the arrest completely surprised them. And I was very surprised to find that there was still money in the house of that amount. That should tell you that the special prosecutor must open his eyes a lot more, because it looks to me that aspect, they had always believed that they were complainants. If there was any search, it would be on the suspects who were alleged to have stolen money from her. She didn't see that coming. The way she swiftly became a suspect now and put under arrest and searched. That portion of the investigation, I think the OSP needs commendation on. And so I think so far I'm okay. I think that they need a proper case management, especially the communication part, because all of these things are important. The public needs to understand where you are, especially for a public interest story like this. They need the communication to be tight, and they should not expect that, especially in the age of social media, if your communication is not tight and regular on a public interest matter like this, with the cocktail of media scrutiny and social media excitement, you will be distracted over time. And I think that aspect they need to probably manage well.
And let me conclude then by asking you on the matter and what Madam Cecilia Dapaah'S lawyers say, that the reporting that is being done is endangering what they call it, her rights, which says you are innocent until proven guilty. That we are on a trajectory where perhaps she'll be guilty until she proves herself innocent. What do you think?
Well, first of all, I think, like I said, the lawyers misunderstand what the media is expected to do. The media is not part of the trial. In fact, there's actually no trial at the moment. What is happening is an investigation to see what that a crime must have been committed. We're not even at the trial yet. So I think the lawyers are completely misunderstanding what the journalists should do, or maybe they think that journalism must yield to the law, or it must yield to the legal profession. These are bodies. In the case of lawyer Kujeto and the rest, they are doing a business. Okay, theirs is a business. The job of the journalist is a constitutional responsibility. We don't have to mix the two. This is a lawyer who has a selfish interest to protect the rights of his clients. That is a narrow space within which the lawyers will operate. The job of the journalist is way bigger than that. They have to carry the public along. They have to educate the public. The judge of the motive of Okudzeto is not to educate the public, is to set his or her client free and do anything possible to get that done. The media doesn't have that responsibility. Their responsibility is more to go into the case, to hold all the people involved in this case responsible. The judiciary, the suspect, the investigators, even the lawyers, all responsible, okay, accountable. And then they have to now do that by educating the public on all of this. So the media's work, in my opinion, is way bigger than the narrow channel of one. Are you guilty or not guilty? Or the narrow channel of I want to protect my client at all costs. So if you hear the lawyers talk about these kind of things, they are speaking from a very, very selfish, narrow spectrum. That is, this is my client. The media is supposed to do what they are doing. I'm not saying that they should say that the woman is already guilty. If, for example, let's take the specific case of Joy FM, for example. There's nowhere in Joy FM's report that they said the woman stole the money. Okay? There's nowhere in that report. I haven't seen that. There's nowhere in the report where they say Mrs. Cecilia Dapaah has stolen $5 million and 48 million Ghana cedis and 1 million Ghana cedis and 700,000 cash. That was not what was said. What was said was that they, through their sources, have gotten to know that there's an account at Prudential Bank and Societe Generale with the cumulative bank transaction or financial transaction of $5 million and 48 million Ghana cedis, with 1 million investment and 700,000 Ghana cedis cash. That is what the Joy FM report was about. That is not a judgment that the woman is guilty of anything. So I fail to agree with the lawyers that this woman is being tried in the public. She signed up for public scrutiny. Okay, she signed up for that. She volunteered herself to work as a public officer, and that her actions will be subject to scrutiny by the public through the media. So anytime the media does their work, I think it would be completely unfair to brand them as judges, prosecutors. I hear statements like the media has become investigators, judges, prosecutors at the same time. I don't think that is fair on the media. We can talk about the public, okay? I have seen a few things on the social media space where there are cartoons and there are things like that. That seems to ridicule her. That is not the problem of the media. They can blame TikTok or Facebook for it. That's not the media's, that cannot be blamed on the media. But what the media is doing basically now is to follow the investigation. If the OSP fails to bring the public along, it should not be construed to mean that the media have to work within the narrow spaces of the OSP or the lawyer or the lawyers or the court. That is not what the media is built to do. The media is doing its work. And I think that even when they get it wrong, we must correct them when they get it wrong, or we must call them when they get it wrong. However, we should not stampede them into becoming subservient to only that aspect where we want you to know this. That is all you need to know. I don't think that will help, to be honest with you. So I don't think there's any trial of Madame Cecilia Dapaah. I think what is happening is that the media is playing its role. They have to hold the court accountable, the court processes accountable. They have to hold, and in doing so, they are enjoying to walk a very, very slippery and narrow path in doing that. They have to hold the lawyers themselves accountable. And they have to hold the OSP accountable. You realize that in all these agencies have very narrow path. The OSP is trying to find facts that could eventually prove the hypothesis that this woman may have committed an offense. Okay? The judiciary is there to ensure that the investigative process goes according to the rules and the constitution and the laws of the land. So they are looking at this investigation purely from the perspective of the law and the processes. Okay? The journalists have a wider responsibility. First, they can now position this investigation even in politics. So, if, for example, Madam Cecilia Dapaah in the past have criticized somebody who talked about $1 million and that person was dismissed and she jubilated about that person, it is a responsibility for the media to say, look, beyond all of this, there's another context to this story, that even those who wished that they made $1 million were ridiculed by this same political party and were deemed to have harbored corrupt intentions. And for that reason, they did not deserve to be even in public service. Those are not things that the judiciary or the OSP will bring to the fore. Those are things that the media can report and put in context. So I completely disagree with those who say that, because you see, at the end of the day, their job is also to educate the public that these people worked in a political space, they work in a legal space, they work in a corporate space. All of those nitty-gritties need to be presented to the public. And so the media, in my opinion, are doing a good job. There's such an intense sunshine on this particular story that I think eventually it is putting pressure on all the parties involved, all the stakeholders, to keep going. I don't think the media is engaged in any public trial or public prosecution. I, however, caution that in high-stakes investigations, cases like this, lawyers are always waiting to set an example of the media. And so those in the forefront must recognize that, because you see, once they shut an organization like Joy FM up with legal threats and all of that, the smaller media organizations begin to fear. Okay, it's also part of tactics. Okay. And so I will urge those who are at the forefront of this investigation to be cognizant of the fact that their move is also being scrutinized by the lawyers and the courts. Okay. That is the beauty of a democratic legal environment, isn't it? The media holds everybody accountable. At the back channel, they are also held accountable by the court and by the lawyers of Madame Cecilia Dapaah. In that way, everybody is held accountable, and everybody should be given the space to ensure that this matter gets to a proper conclusion. That's what I think.
Thank you. Thank you very much for speaking to us.
Thank you very much for having me.
Mr. Raymond, retired journalist, speaking to us. We'll take you to the matters, the legal matters for now, because we'll speak to a lawyer. We'll speak to lawyer David Ametepe shortly. But